The 12th cow went down at midday in front of him. Adamu was the one who saw it first. The slow buckle of its back legs, the way it tried twice to stand and couldn't, the particular silence that falls over a herd in the moment they understand one of their own is gone. He called for his father. His father came running and then stopped running about 10 feet away because there was nothing left to run toward. His father did not speak for a long time. He just stood there in the dry grass where the grazing routes used to be green, looking at an animal that had been alive an hour earlier and the year's accounts changing in front of him in real time. 11 dead before this one, across 4 months. Not sold, not slaughtered, buried, one at a time, where the rain stopped coming the way they used to, where land that had fed 3 generations of Damari herders had started giving less every single year. Adamu was 19. He had grown up counting his family's wealth in cattle, the way his father had, the way his grandfather had. That year, for the first time, he watched the counting go the wrong direction with his own eyes, one animal at a time. A man came to their settlement 2 weeks later. He did not come with cattle or with seed or with anything the elders recognized as an honest trade. He came with cash in hand and a number attached to it that made grown men go quiet. By the end of this story, Adamu would learn that some money is never really free. It only delays the bill. The man's name was Saleh. He was not Damari. He did not say exactly where he was from, and nobody asked twice. He spoke softly, the way men do when they already know they don't need to shout to be heard. Your father's cattle are dying because the land has turned against you. I am not offering you land, I am offering you a salary, every month, paid, whether the rain comes or not. He did not say what the work was, not directly, not that first day. He let the cash in his hand finish the sentence he hadn't. Adamu's father had taught him since he could walk that a Damari man's worth was measured by his herd, his word, and his willingness to protect what was his, not by money handed to him by a stranger with no cattle of his own. But Adamu's father had also wept quietly 2 nights earlier, alone, over the 11th dead cow, thinking his son was asleep. Adamu was not asleep, he heard it, and it was that sound, not greed, not adventure, that walked him toward Saleh's camp 3 weeks later. If you have ever watched someone you love break quietly under a weight they wouldn't let you see and felt yourself move towards something you knew was wrong because of it, hit that like. Saleh's camp was not what Adamu expected. There were no villains there, by his own first impression, just other young men like him, sons of herders and farmers from a dozen collapsing settlements, all carrying the same story with different names attached to it. The pay was real. The first month, Adamu sent money home that bought more than 3 of his father's surviving cattle combined would have fetched at market. His mother wept when she saw it, not from joy alone, but because she understood, faster than Adamu did, exactly what kind of money travels that fast. The work in the beginning was framed as protection, guarding herds and grazing routes from rival raiders, intimidating rather than attacking, a show of force more than an act of one. Adamu told himself this was closer to the old hunters' guilds his grandfather used to describe, men trained to defend their people, not to prey on others. This was, of course, exactly the story every man in that camp had been told to make the work easier to live inside. Saleh noticed Adamu early. The boy worked harder than the pay required, asked fewer questions than the others, and carried himself like someone who still believed somewhere underneath it all that he was protecting something rather than taking it. One evening, weeks in, Saleh sat near him at the fire and talked almost gently about his own father, a herder too, dead now. Buried cattle, failed rains, the same slow drought collapse that was eating Adamu's family's land too. It was the only time Saleh spoke like a man instead of a recruiter. "You remind me small of myself before," he said, and did not finish the sentence. Adamu did not trust him after that conversation, but he no longer fully hated him either, and it was that small, quiet shift that let him keep showing up the next morning and the morning after without his conscience stopping him. 4 months in, Saleh gathered 12 men, Adamu among them, and told them for the first time without softening it what the night's work would actually be. A farming settlement 2 days south had grain stores and livestock. Saleh told them the settlement owed money to people above him, people Adamu had never met and never would. He did not explain the debt. He did not need to. He only needed the men to move. Adamu stood at the edge of the group that night, checking the strap on his boots twice, then a third time, the way a man fusses with small things when the large thing in front of him is too heavy to look at directly. None of the other men spoke much either. There was none of the loud bravado he had expected from 12 armed men preparing to ride out. Just a tight, business-like quiet, broken only by the occasional cough, the shifting of feet, a horse adjusting its weight. Adamu told himself one last time that this was still the protection work and that the line had not yet truly been crossed. He believed it for almost the entire walk there. What happened that night is not something this story will walk through in detail, and it shouldn't be. What matters is what Adamu saw in the aftermath, in the gray hour before dawn, standing at the edge of a compound that was not his to be standing in. Near the far side of the compound, 2 of Saleh's men stood watching over a group of women and children who had been gathered together against the wall. The women's faces were wet, their eyes wide and darting, the way faces look when fear has not yet found anywhere to settle. The 2 men guarding them looked nothing like that. One of them was almost smiling, not a wide smile, just a faint curl at the corner of his mouth, the look of a man who believed the night had gone well. Adamu had never seen a face do that in the presence of so much fear, and he would not forget it. An old farmer sat in the dirt outside a burned storage hut. He was not weeping, he was not shouting, he was simply sitting, very still, with one hand resting flat on the ground beside him, the other holding a single undamaged calabash bowl he must have carried out of the wreckage without thinking, the way a man grabs the nearest small thing when everything large has already been lost. His feet were bare. There was ash on his trouser leg that he had not noticed or no longer cared to notice. For one unbearable second, their eyes met. The man did not look at Adamu with hatred. He looked at him the way you look at weather, something that happened to you, not someone who chose to do it. He did not say anything. He just kept holding the bowl. Adamu stood there longer than he meant to, long enough to notice the man's hands were the same shape as his own father's, cracked at the knuckles, the particular roughness that comes only from decades of pulling at the same patch of earth or the same line of animals, season after season, trying to keep something alive. That look and those hands did something to Adamu that 4 months of his own conscience had not managed to do. The old farmer was not an enemy, not a rival, not someone who deserved what had happened to him. He was just a man, exactly like Adamu's own father, who had buried something he loved and would now have to start over with nothing. Adamu understood, standing there, that he had become the very thing his family's collapsing herd once needed protection from. Tell me in the comments, has there ever been a single moment, not a long realization, but one sharp moment where you suddenly saw clearly what you had become? You don't have to explain the moment, just tell me it happened.
Adamu did not announce his exit. Men who announced their exit from Saleh's camp did not always get to leave it. He simply stopped showing up to the next gathering, and then the one after that, and let the silence speak for him the way Saleh himself once had. He went home with his portion of 4 months' pay still mostly unspent, and gave nearly all of it to his father, who did not ask where it came from a second time, because he already understood the first time he saw his son's face. There is a Hausa proverb the elders in his settlement still say, usually about something far smaller than what Adamu carried home that year. Ko me girman dare, gari ze waye. No matter how long the night, day will surely break. Adamu's father said it to him once, quietly, the week he came home, and never spoke of it again. What this story does not give Adamu is a clean homecoming. Several of the young men who stayed in Saleh's camp were from his own settlement, sons of families he had grown up beside. When Adamu left, he did not just leave a job. He left behind a circle of men who now saw him as something between a coward and a threat, someone who knew exactly what they had done and chose not to be part of it. He was not run out of his community. Nothing so dramatic happened. It was quieter than that. Invitations that stopped coming, conversations that went silent when he approached, the particular loneliness of being the one who said no in a place where saying no marked you as different. Adamu rebuilt what he could of his father's herd, slowly, the honest way, the way that does not pay in 4 months what it once promised. Some nights, watching the other young men of the settlement gather without him, he wondered if leaving had cost him more than it saved him. This is the part of the story the elders never fully prepared any of them for, that doing the right thing does not always return you to where you started. Sometimes it just gives you a different, harder ground to stand on, alone. Adamu is 23 now. His herd is smaller than his father's once was, but every animal in it was earned the slow way, and he can say that to his own children one day without his voice changing. He does not call what he did courage. When his younger cousins ask him about that year at all, he tells them only one thing, the same way every time. I did not stop because I became a better man than the others. I stopped because I saw a man's hands, and they were my father's hands, and I could not carry on after that. He still sees some of the men from Saleh's camp sometimes, at a distance, at the market, at a wedding he was not quite invited to but came to anyway. They do not greet him the way they used to. He has made his peace with that, mostly, on the days it is easy. On the days it is not, he goes and stands near his cattle for a while, and that is usually enough. If you've ever had to choose between belonging and being right, and paid for it either way, subscribe. This is the struggle, and Adamu's road was never far from the one a lot of us are walking too.